Time goes by, years and decades. She comes, she goes, but her story remains so. She is you, I, and the others. She belongs to herself and not another. She is whole, complete, and absolute, for she is resolute.
Hello and welcome to She Is Resolute. I'm your host Suvarna, and our endeavor on this show is to showcase conversations of grit and growth for the determined modern woman willing to take complete ownership of her life and her mindset. Our attempt is to bring to the fore actionable information on personal development through discussions with experts and personalities who have, in one way or another, proven that they too are resolute. So enjoy the episode and please do like, share, and subscribe.
This episode is special, guys, because of my personal fascination with the subject of neuroscience. My experience the past couple of years educating myself on the research in this field has left me spellbound because it provides the scientific basis of the whats, the whys, and the hows of who we are and what we are capable of. Our nervous system, its genetics, our environment, our experiences, the meaning we derive from those experiences are all tied to the workings of this amazing supercomputer between our ears. So bear with me while I try to contain my excitement because our guest today is Dr. Shubha Tole, a renowned neuroscientist doing path-breaking work in her field. Well, I'll be talking for a very long time if I have to cover all her awards and accolades, but just to highlight a few, she won the National Woman Bioscientist Award in 2008, the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award in 2010, which is India's highest scientific honor awarded by the Government of India, the Infosys Prize 2014 in Life Sciences, and the list goes on and on, ladies and gentlemen. She's a pioneer in her field, and her award-winning research has contributed, and listen to this carefully, guys, in understanding the genetic mechanisms that shape the development of those parts of our brain, which are the main centers for learning, cognition, and emotion. Wow. This is not all. Shubha also finds the time to reach out to students and guide them in their respective fields to help foster the love of their subjects. I can't wait to pick her brains. No pun intended. Shubha, welcome to She Is Resolute.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Suvarna. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having this creative idea outside of your own profession to sort of contribute to the growth of young people everywhere. I mean, I'm in awe. So I'm honored that you invited me and looking forward to talk.
Oh my God, the pleasure is all mine. And I'm going to jump right into the questions. So let's go back a few years. What is the first memory or instance in your life where you felt like, the understandings of the brain or the mechanics of the brain is something that you were interested in? What piqued your interest in neuroscience?
Oh, my journey to neuroscience came through some slightly different paths. For my first love was actually physics. Physics fascinated me. It seemed to me the combination of science and math, and those were my favorite subjects. And then in the 11th and 12th, the mystery and complexity of biology began taking over. And I just found the living world so complex, and it just drew me. At the time, one was sort of programmed that if you liked biology, you did medicine, and if you liked physics, you did engineering.
Right.
Not true. Not true. You do medicine if you wish to become a doctor, a physician, you wish to treat people, you wish to understand diseases, and so on. You become an engineer if you actually wish to engineer things, build, design, innovate. It's a whole, both professions demanding creativity, but different lines of things. Not really, as I realized, my interest was. My interest was in understanding why the living world is the way it is. And I realized medicine was not the path to that. The life sciences exhibition in St. Xavier's College, there was a sunny summer afternoon after my 12th boards. That afternoon changed my life. Okay, the life science program conceived by visionary minds, one of them being the late Father Lancy Pereira. Uh, this program had everything in biology that just, I wanted to study. So that summer afternoon, I decided I wanted to pursue life science. And the most fascinating structure in biology, the most fascinating organ to my mind was the brain, because it gives you the power to understand everything else. So, so what is this living thing, this living structure that when it is grown correctly and when it is wired up, enables the power to question itself, to ask, who am I? What am I? And possibly even why am I? Okay, if we didn't have our brain circuits, we would not be able to ask these questions. We would not be able to think about them. We would not be able to feel, sense, be moved. Without our brains, we would not be able to love. Uh, so it seemed, I mean, we would not be able to create, all of the creativity, the poetry, the art that makes our life rich. It comes from the human brain.
Yeah.
So this is the structure I wanted to study. So this is a really sort of long road to deciding I wanted to study neuroscience.
That's fantastic because I remember even, and I think that's still the case. You either have the science route where you're going into the medicine route, or you have the engineering route. And I too was confused at that point of time. My father's a doctor, so for me it was like a very big tussle when I felt like I don't want to do medicine, but I enjoy biotechnology. I enjoy studying the human anatomy, but I felt like I don't have an option to do that at that point of time. So in your time, which was a little earlier than mine, it's fantastic that you were a trailblazer and you decided to do something which probably the term neuroscience and neuroscientific studies is also, I'm guessing, 2 decades old. It's not fairly.
So in India, neuroscience did not percolate the student psyche for a long time. Okay,
I see.
Still doesn't. Neuroscience has been an established field, internationally for a long, long time. In India, neurology, the medical angle to neuroscience, has been more dominant, to the extent that undergraduates do not know neuroscience. So, when I finished my PhD and postdoc in the US and I returned to India to set up my lab, PhD students who joined our program at TIFR, the best and the brightest, after hearing about my work, one of them said, "Madam, I find this work very interesting and very new and very unusual. I've never heard about it before. But if you don't mind my asking, madam, is there a future in this? Is there?" It's just told me how, So I had to tell this very reasonable, bright young person. Bright, reasonable young people will ask these questions, right? And they should. I had to tell them, do you know the Society for Neuroscience, which is an international organization, has 30,000 members coming to its meetings every year? It probably next to the American Heart Association, it may be the largest gathering of people every year. And, the members twice that, only some portion come to the. So, the fact that it is such a intense, rich field of pursuit was not known to students here. Even today, I think our undergraduate biology training is very strong in cell biology, in biochemistry, in genetics, and students sort of want to do what they already know. There is the seeking kind of thing. I understand it, therefore, thing I should follow. The risk taking, there might be a whole lot out there that you don't yet know but has tweaked your fancy, and you have the power and the ability to pursue it. This is something I would like to communicate to students. Not science. If there is something new that you've heard of, you have you have one life, to follow just because you are comfortable with whatever it is you've learned. It means you're deciding that whoever made your undergraduate program and taught you courses labeled X and Y and Z, they've pretty much limited what you're going to do in life, because what you're comfortable in, right?
Oh my God, yes. I totally resonate with what you're saying. And I think risk-taking abilities is also a muscle that you need to build. You slowly inch your way out. You can't suddenly do it, but it's required. It's like if you don't try, then you just never know.
It's a state of mind. It's a state of mind. This internal state of, I can explore, I can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Connects with the kind of theme we've been discussing over email and WhatsApp. I think perhaps young girls venture less than young boys. This is just an observation. Please, nobody be offended. But it's an observation that. But we can talk about it later.
I'm going to get to that, and I just want to go back to the environment. That would have probably played a role in you deciding that you want to venture into something new and something that hasn't been ventured into in India yet. Can you speak a little bit about how important your environment was?
Certainly, but let me not be too presumptuous. It's not like I was the first person to pursue neuroscience in India at all. Okay. In fact, I would say modern neuroscience was started at the Tata Institute. Okay, one of the
I see.
modern approaches to neuroscience by Obaid Siddiqui, who set up my department where I'm working today.
I see.
He set up neurogenetics, and it's a huge field of neuroscience. So, and he did this in, I think, the late 60s. So
Wow.
I was not the first at all, but I'm one of a few. Okay,
Right.
my lab is one of a handful of labs that studies the embryonic development of the brain in vertebrates. Okay, invertebrates, Drosophila are more standard organisms that are more easily used in undergraduate institutions. But there are
Right.
a handful of labs that study neurodevelopment in vertebrates in India today.
Wow. Wow. Growing up, did your mother and did your father, and then later on in your life, how did your family play a role in you becoming who you are today?
I grew up in the residence complex, oddly enough, of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, where my father was a scientist. He's now retired.
All right.
And my mother was an occupational therapist. And in this campus, there lived 100 faculty members and their children. And I think doing science was sort of the more accepted thing to do in this. So, in fact, I had a friend who wanted to pursue the arts, and the immediate reaction is, "Oh, you didn't get the marks." Things just play out everywhere. You just change the name, and these things play out everywhere. I've actually followed, in some sense, the straight path throughout. I was passionate about science. I pursued, I decided, okay, not to do the medicine or the engineering route. But after my bachelor's, I applied to graduate schools abroad. I actually visited a few institutions in India to check if they had neuroscience PhD programs.
I see.
Time, biotechnology was just beginning. And
Right.
was actually doing so. Pretty much, it's safe to say I left the country because the kind of neuroscience I wanted to study was not available. And
All right.
that's also why I returned. I felt it's more meaningful for me to contribute something where it might make a difference rather than being the 288th research lab in developmental, vertebrate brain development in the US where I trained. So it mattered a lot to me to be able to contribute and set up something where something doesn't, is not already taken root.
Right.
So in a sense, my path was pretty straightforward. I didn't decide to branch out and, do a startup company in some, prosthetic devices or some of the more daring things. But I think my parents gave me that inner confidence that if you're sure you want to do it, then you have the ability to do it. So just do it. And
Wow.
look left and right as to, what auntie next door is saying, the auntie next door phenotype. Oh, oh, got the marks, didn't get the marks. All of these random other influences that affect young people, today and in previous generations.
Correct.
I think, follow your heart, do your own sort of research. I visited all these institutions in India. I visited libraries. I read the brochures. There was no email and web then. So I went to the USEFI, the United States Education Foundation, something, and I looked at the brochures of all of the neuroscience programs. And I actually, now that I look back, I managed to shortlist 10 to 12 of the best neuroscience programs in the US. So just by reading, get information, make your own choice, and then, live your choice, accept it. You did it with the worst thing that I would regret is to look back and say, if only I had put in this bit of effort or that bit of effort. Right. So I don't mind if I don't get my plan A in life. I can be a plan A, plan B, plan C. But as long as I made those plans using all the information at hand, it was a conscious choice. I'd be delighted with plan B and C and D. I've not got everything I wanted. I thought I wanted in life, but I lived it so that it looks to everybody else that I've always got what I wanted.
No, but it does seem like,
I
I'm
have no.
sorry I interrupted. I'm sorry I interrupted, but it seems to me like even at that point of time, like when people speak about things like passion, they think like passion is going to fall on your lap or purpose is going to fall on your lap. No, I feel like you have to take complete ownership of that process, of that journey, and you have to really nurture it by doing your research, doing the work, doing the effort. So the fact that you visited many institutions, you did your research on the institutions abroad that were offering what you wanted to do, just shows a sense of wanting to nurture an interest that you have, which you want to develop further. So that's such a key takeaway. I do want to now get into what your views are on girls generally in India, girls and women are, culturally, we unfortunately or fortunately still in that position where there are a lot of social, cultural, and environmental factors that, lead to developing a mentality for us to compromise on our dreams and our vision for the future. And, given your rich background and your experience, what is your advice to young girls or young women who tend to constrain themselves because of these social and environmental factors?
Thank you for asking. And you've used the word compromise, which is actually at the heart of my thoughts on this process. I've, in fact, centered some of my blogs and so on the word pre-compromise. It's
Wow.
even that we make a compromise when we come to it. All of us do that. I've made compromises, many of them, right? But like I said, I live the choices as if, that's what I'm going to do best. And then it looks like I've made that as my choice. It's not the compromising that's the problem. It's the pre-compromising. You compromise even before you get to a position where you have to make a decision and either compromise or not. What do I mean? When we are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, okay, that delicate age when society is somehow communicating to us that we are girls. Being a girl is something different. That's the age when girls begin to behave different from boys. Okay, yeah. That's the age when you sit in a chair, you're supposed to smooth your skirt so it covers your knees. That's the age when you don't just sit. That's the age when you don't just wander around and lean on a wall and look around. Okay, right?
Yeah.
We were out camping once in Wisconsin, I think. And I remember sitting by the lake. I had just gone through a trail, a couple of friends, my husband and me. And I reached the lake first, and there was a bench. And I sat on the bench, like stretched my legs out. And my husband looked at me and said, I've never seen a woman sit in this pose. And I was like, it feels so amazing. I know why guys sit like that. But you see what I mean? We are trained to behave different. And there's always somebody looking at us.
Yeah.
You walk into a room, somebody will comment on your dress, your hair. There might be very nice comments, very, very. And, women will compliment women. Women get noticed. What you wear makes a difference. Do this test. Close your eyes and think of the last, 20 people you met. You'll be able to describe what the women wore. You won't be able to describe what the men wore. Yeah. Is it bad to get noticed? Some people enjoy it, some people don't care. My point is, it's all part of the social programming that you're different. Your baseline isn't to just be. You can't just be.
Right.
If you sit with your legs stretched out, people are going to look at you and think. Okay, it's not ladylike. It's not graceful. It's not whatever it is women are supposed to be. That's just the behavior. But the internal programming is somehow communicated that what you want to do in life is going to be imposed upon by unseen and unknown opinions and people. Okay. Yeah. To put it bluntly, you're going to marry, because if you don't marry, then you're, really incomplete and half. And, let's not even go there. My God. I mean, an unmarried man does not get harassed as much or be thought of as, incomplete. A woman who chooses to get married, oh my God, there must be something wrong with you. How will your life be complete? And, this is, my experience is that of a woman, girl growing up, woman in science, heterosexual, and so on. I don't even want to presume to try and understand what it must be like to grow up gay, to grow up trans, I cannot even presume to speak to those experiences. But as a girl, well, you're incomplete if you're not married, so you're going to get married. And then, of course, what he does and which city he lives in and what his profession is going to somehow affect yours. And
absolutely,
in-law thing. And because all of these unknowns are going to impinge upon your choices, why do you even want to have hopes and dreams? Why don't you wait till all of these forces get defined and then you know where you are allowed to dream and you can dream in that space?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the message we give our girls when they are young. They pick this up. Now, I just missed it somehow. Well, because of my parents. I just missed it. I grew up a tomboy. I was proud of the fact that I could climb trees. If I walked with some grace, it's because I inherited it from my mom and I love to dance. It's
correct.
One fine day, so I go to this life science exhibition, I mull it in my head and I come home and tell mom, I don't think I'll be doing medicine, I'll be doing biology instead. And she was like, yeah, all right, this is the path. So I basically made my plans and made my, there was this implicit faith that I would have my act together. And because there was that faith, whether I did or did not, it sort of was self-fulfilling.
Right.
So,
so yeah, parents, I do believe have a role to play to, I think, encourage that in girls. Like you mentioned about the social programming, I think about that a lot because for me, the transition from school to and college and then to a corporate setup, and for many women like me, is difficult because I think somewhere our risk-taking abilities, our confidence, our inherent confidence, our ability to speak up, our ability to say no, to draw boundaries, get stunted at a very young age when you're expected to be ladylike, where boys are rowdy, they're hitting each other, they're abusing each other, they're not, which is why they develop that thick skin of not letting, seeking validation that much from their peers. Like women seek validation because they were rewarded for it. Like if you're doing something ladylike, you're rewarded for it. So then that's
absolutely.
the programming that, okay,
Yeah,
I need to be ladylike.
Yeah, and
I shouldn't speak up.
If you can't fake those behaviors, then you are made to feel inadequate.
Yes, absolutely. So the transition was stark, and I felt that maybe girls themselves and parents who are now in a position to tell their girls to just be, I think would be an important thing at this day and age, to be able to allow girls to not have those problems later in their 20s when they're in a situation where they're pursuing a career or not in a protected environment of a family or things like that. So that those were really, really good takeaways. I do want to come to that point where you mentioned that you came back to India after doing your PhD from Caltech, and then you also got your postdoc, and you were doing your postdoc from University of Chicago. What was it? Just that inherent need to come back and serve your country that you decided to come back? And when you came back, I would like to understand the struggles you faced and how you overcame those struggles when you were setting up your lab.
Okay, so that takes me back. I think I was full of idealism and stars in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to think I haven't lost too much of that, even 2 years since I've returned. I think from day one, I started my PhD work at Caltech. From day one, I was blown away with the teaching, the coursework, the research. I remember immediately trying to map how I would teach this course when I returned.
Wow.
It was always how I can take this and, take it to my friends or my colleagues or my peers or my, young students in India. So I finished my PhD. It took me 6 years, master's and PhD. Oh, I met my husband in graduate school. He was a physicist.
Lovely.
Both of us were very keen to return. Both of us wanted to contribute to our country. Both of us were very like-minded in that. It takes planning. You don't just suddenly decide it all and return. Of course, there are personal reasons. I mean, both our families were at home. But I think broadly what brought us both back was a desire to contribute. So
that's beautiful. I mean, having a common vision. This is again something that I notice people struggle with that sometimes when your partner and you don't align on the vision that you have for yourself. And if you have a common dream together, that can really be a beautiful thing. And that's something that's sustainable throughout your life. So I do encourage my friends who are in serious relationships to, seek that out or tinker interests together or see if you have a common passion together and see if you can work that out together, because that actually ends up being a very beautiful process when you're learning together. Your learnings are contributing to your partner's learnings and vice versa. It's wonderful what you shared. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to come back to your lab and the groundbreaking contributions that you've made into understanding the development of some of the most complex parts of our brain, the neocortex, the hippocampus, the amygdala. And these are critical parts of the brain that deal with higher brain functions like perception, language, learning, memory, emotions. So can you please tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that you're doing for me and the audience for them to understand a little bit?
Okay, sure. I'll be happy to. Think about how you would build a very complex computer if you knew how to set it up and how to assemble it.
Okay.
You would have a parts list. You would go purchase the parts. There would be, chips and wires and, circuits and capacitors and jungle, and you'd hook it all up.
Right.
Now, think about how if you had to grow each part. Okay, so think about if you had to 3D print each part first. You would need
to
do it, right? So our DNA has all of the instructions, okay, that will create every single cell type in our body. So that's like the parts list. Now, we each start as one cell, that one becomes 2, 4, 8, 16, and you have identical cells. All the cells have identical DNA. Okay, even in our grown-up bodies.
I see.
Each cell has the entire genetic information. All the DNA is there in all the cells. It's like a library. The master library is present in all the cells. But the cell chooses to pick out selective books and read off instructions from them. Okay. So, of course, you don't take that book out into, say, your kitchen and make the recipe from it. Okay? Get dirty. So you never ever take the gene out of the nucleus. But what you do, out of the DNA, you make an RNA copy. So this word DNA and RNA are now very popular because of RNA vaccines and so on. So you RNA transcript. It's literally like writing down what's in the DNA. And that's what you take to your kitchen. And then it's read off into a recipe to make this protein or that protein. And proteins are tools. Okay, some proteins are shaped like this, and they can, like open out maybe, nuts or something. Some proteins are like this, and they can sort of form structural elements. Proteins are literally like mechanical tools that do jobs inside cells. Proteins that are enzymes break things up. Okay, but you have to make a protein that's shaped like this, which means you have to code, like 3D print all of these parts. The information is the DNA, which you've transcribed into RNA, which you've then taken into your kitchen to make the protein with. Okay, how do brain cells get produced out of this? So when that one cell becomes 2, 4, 8, 16, and then you have this ball of identical cells. At some point, the cells stop becoming identical because they stop, all of them, reading the same genes. They will sub-select and read only some genes and use that information to make those proteins. And then that process feeds on itself because some of those proteins will go back into the DNA, into the library, and say, I can see those 3 books in that corner. Let's take those out and read those. Okay, that's why your blood cells, red blood cells, are the only ones which make hemoglobin. No other cell for hemoglobin is making hemoglobin protein, right? That's why proteins that sense light, rhodopsins, are only in the neurons of the retina. Okay, no other cell makes them because no other cell has taken out that book, has read them. Yeah. So I look at how do different structures of the brain create different brain cells. So that a neuron that is going to, and now you've created the cell, and now that cell has to know how to send its wire. Cell in a particular area of the cerebral cortex, my wire is going to go to the other hemisphere to make this left-right connection.
Right.
Or Is my wire going to go all the way down the spinal cord, form the corticospinal tract, and eventually control how my arms and legs move?
Wow.
So the instructions for that are in the programming of that cell. And that cell, that neuron, has come from a mother cell, which came from that ball of cells, cascading cascading result of which proteins each of them made, which books each of them read from their library at which stage.
Wow.
So that's the magic of development. You have to 3D print your parts list yourself. Okay. And then you have to wire it up. So you have to lay down cues. So it's literally like, it's literally like setting a bunch of, let's say, ants in one side of your culture, say, and that you've laid down a sugar track and the ants are running along. Okay. So that's how the wires grow. But, so, and you might also have another bunch of ants that don't like sugar, and therefore they go the other direction. And that's how attractive and repulsive cues control how the brain circuits grow. So,
wow.
Study how does circuitry form? How do structures themselves form? How do they form? Where they form?
Oh my God, that is so good.
I mean, 22 years, I haven't lost my fascination for this because it is just so wildly fascinating. I could talk forever, but I'm sure we have limited time. So,
no, I hear you. I hear you say that the little that I gathered, not having a science background, is that our genetic makeup does contribute significantly to our behavior and to who we are physically and mentally. But genetics aside, from the little reading that I've done, studies in the past 2 decades suggest that our brains circuitry to a certain extent is changeable, and that's called neuroplasticity, and that's become a buzzword in the personal development space like big time. So I would love to have your take on that.
Okay. I have 2 levels of answer. Okay. One is and I'm going to sound like a personal development coach. Okay. But given how many pressures there are, some internal, some external, on how much you cannot do and how much, our comfort zone limits us. Our peers, protectors, advisors limit us. There is so much of can't in our lives that I broadly agree that generally thinking that yes, you can is possibly the best way to achieve anything. Simply because there is so many naysayers in our life, right?
Absolutely.
So this is the personal development angle. What is the neuroscience basis for this? Neuroscience hasn't gotten to the precise level where we can tell you that when you visualize yourself, attaining success, or when you think you can, or when you stand in power pose in front of a mirror, then these neurons grow these wires, and that creates that feeling. We haven't gotten to that level. The answers are in the brain and how these circuits modify. Since everything we do comes from the control of our brain, okay, and it is completely clear that our brain circuits are flexible. I mean, everybody knows that if you want to learn something, you have to practice it, right? I mean, you're better at anything if you practice it. What is happening when you practice? Your brain circuits are getting more fine-tuned. So playing, say, the tabla or the piano or the sitar, the coordination of these complicated movements is going to come with practice. And if you don't practice, you're not going to get the coordination. What is coordination? But the precise, controlled and syncopated firing of neurons that control the muscles, right? So obviously things are changing, the circuits are not static. Anytime you learn anything, the circuits have to change. You can't function without circuits being, so your circuits are plastic is sort of, it's already been there in neuroscience. In some sense, personal development people found out. Thank God. Yeah. I mean, if your brain circuits weren't plastic, you would not remember what I said 2 minutes ago. You would not be able to, I mean, we continuously learn new things. And now that I've described how the brain is a computer that wires itself and so on, if those wires don't change their connections or strengthen some connections, weaken others, you won't be able to function. You won't. You put your coffee cup, you won't remember that milk goes in the coffee, or that you don't like. You won't remember. You won't be able to literally function. You won't remember the
Correct.
of life. So yes, circuits are plastic. As a neuroscientist, what's new about that? As a personal development angle, yes, please recognize they're plastic. And then telling yourself you can't is going to prevent you from even trying and prevent you from practicing. If the first you try and learn a dance move or something and it just doesn't come and you give it up, you're obviously not, you've written yourself a rejection slip, right? So,
Yeah.
so yes, the personal development coaches are all right. Absolutely remove the inhibitions. That way you're going to go farther than you ever would. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, this is not to say that all of a sudden, tomorrow, just because I decide that I've really, really always liked, I don't know, pick some subject that I've totally abandoned. Let's see, I haven't had chemistry for many, many years. So tomorrow I decide I want to become a chemist, or tomorrow I decide I want to paint. Okay, let's pick paint, because I think the last time I painted anything interesting might have been when I was in school, standard 4 or something. Yes, I can do it if you want to. Yeah, if I throw myself into it, I will become better at it than I am today. There is no question, and that's going to be because your brain circuits change. But if I had painting talent and if I had a passion for painting, I would have pursued it long ago. I would have, gone farther down that development than I would if I'm going to start it today. Spend some time finding what it is you want to spend your lives on.
Yeah.
Put yourselves into that. I mean,
Yeah.
the future is open, and if you've always wanted to sing, and life and circumstance made it so that you couldn't, by all means, start learning. I started learning to play the keyboard 2 years ago, and it is so difficult and so challenging. I love it. I love it. Little children learn to the two-handed thing, and they learn to read and play at the same time, and it's so challenging for me, and I love it. Okay, but I'm not training to be a concert pianist. I'm just doing it because I love it, and it's for me. That's all.
Yeah.
So now, if you wanted to become a performance level, musician, then you needed to have started early, and your genetic makeup does set up some predispositions, right? I mean, it's impossible to say what your natural talents are, because by the time you ask this question, you're so programmed by your immediate circumstances that you don't know how much has been people telling you you can or can't, or this is a good profession, this is a bad profession. So the data is so contaminated, it's impossible to say what your natural possibilities could have been.
Yeah.
So the best answer is yes, the possibilities are broader than you ever imagined. This said, the biology will tell you that, yeah, there's no way I'm going to become a 100-meter sprinter. Okay.
Yeah.
I could have done that even if I started when I was 2 years old. He, of course, places limits, but it maybe puts you in large strata. And within that strata, you can practice and get yourself to a level where at least it's rewarding to you.
Yeah.
So I worry about where your strata is and what your talents are. Finally, you'll figure it out yourself. You will figure out whether you're not going to, produce the painting that gives you joy. And at that point, you'll say, okay, fine, maybe I'm not meant for this. So life will tell you. So, the general idea that you can do much more than you thought you could is a good one.
You mentioned something very interesting. I mean, whatever you said is so good, but you mentioned something about visualizing and then getting into a position, or just telling yourself that something's going to work and that's going to work, and that's become such a big thing now in social media. Also, if you go to YouTube, there are going to be visualization meditations. You hear top performers, artists, athletes talking about and really vouching for visualization. I mean, is there any science behind it? Because I also heard about some, even within the scientific community, people developing augmented reality and virtual reality for people to be able to get over fears, to be able to get over phobias, to be able to come out of their comfort zone by pushing themselves in that situation and constantly pushing themselves in that situation. So is there any scientific basis? What is your
There is some scientific basis underlying all of these.
Okay.
We understand them less well than we would like right now. But let me give you give you a little bit on this visualization. Okay, there is a Bruce Willis movie, The Surrogates. Maybe
Right. Yeah.
10,
I
20 years old.
recollected, but I've not, watched it.
So the initial few frames of this speak about research conducted on mice and monkeys where um, a monkey's intention to move something, okay, recorded from its brain. Okay, the monkey doesn't have to physically move a lever or a cursor on a screen. Okay, this is an actual scientific experiment where a monkey is trained, you move a cursor to a certain spot and then the monkey gets a reward, some juice.
Mm.
The monkey figured out it didn't actually have to move the cursor. It just had to think about moving it. And if the recording was taken from the sort of action planning neuron in the premotor area, the decision making neuron, that was enough to basically
Move the cursor.
move if the scientists had wired it like this. So the scientists could
Right.
wire the cursor to the movement of the mouse or to the firing of that decision making neuron. And the monkey figured out, okay, thinking karne se ho jata hai, My point is, if it is a motor skill, okay, a skill and your muscles moving, of course, the muscles themselves have to be trained. So if I sit and think and visualize basketball, but my muscles don't actually move, when I play it, my muscles aren't going to be able to execute all what my brain has planned and learned.
Exactly.
Let's take the muscles out of it. But the brain itself, there is a lot of timing needed to be learned, a lot of fine-tuned timing. And when people do this visualization or this virtual reality, I've never done it, but I can well imagine that what you're doing is training those decision circuitries that come into play when you're actually doing the job. It is giving practice to a set of circuitry that's higher order than the actual muscles.
I see. So what I hear you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you can't just do it in your sleep. You have to be in a state of awareness. You have to be in a state of focus to be able to develop some sort of neuroplasticity, and you have to practice it with persistence and consistency. It's not going to be an overnight development that you can rewire circuits, because if it was that easy, we wouldn't be able to function, right? If we were
Absolutely.
that plastic.
It's not going to be overnight, and it has to be actively engaged. So visualization is actually as exhausting as doing the real thing. The only your arms and legs, but you're doing something in here. So that's and now you can see why it would work, because it is one part of what you have to train anyways.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm going to digress a little bit and come to something different now. And this is something that I've heard as a child and even otherwise. And there's a general notion that, women are supposedly right-brained. And because of that, we are supposedly better at being emotional, at being nurturing, and having better planning abilities. And men are left-brained, so they have better logic, they have better reasoning. And this bias, unfortunately, has reinforced stereotypes where women are preferred in roles where they're supposedly better at, for instance, nurses or teachers or secretaries. And they can't handle roles that entail logic, reasoning, or risk-taking abilities, like being in a executive or leadership position. And I read that even in the scientific community, to a certain extent, this sort of bias is being countered. And the term used is neurosexism, for the purposes of opposing this sort of stereotype bias and, alleging differences between the male brain and the female brain. So as someone who studies the brain right from the development at an embryonic stage, I'm super excited to know what your views on neurosexism are and about this sort of harmful stereotyping.
Okay, I love how correctly you talked about alleged differences between the male and
I'm a lawyer.
I love it. I love it. Okay, here's my broad take. Every two individuals are different from each other. Okay, yours is different from mine. My son's brain is different from his brother's.
Yeah.
Why is it so surprising that male and female brains are different? Of course, there are differences. Now, the brain is so complex that to try and broadly generalize that, okay, this is right brain and this is left brain, and therefore people can and can't do, is again a whole bunch of simplified social programming that we could do well without. the data that we are getting, okay, where did these stereotypes come? These stereotypes come because at some point people looked at the women around them and the men around them and said, oh, the women are all taking care of babies or, patients or whatever. And oh, the men are all, I don't know, going out hunting and bringing home the bacon. Well, that data set too is not a pure data set, right? Because you're counting men and women in a society which has raised them to do those programmed roles. The real way to do this assessment would be raise a society in which you don't have any girl-boy names, okay? You don't have blue stuff, and you don't have gender-assigned clothing and hair and all this business.
Yeah.
So schools allow girls to wear ponytails, but not boys. This has been a sore point. To wear studs, but not boys. I mean, so you raise a society where you throw all this out. And then you ask, are women more this and are men more that? The data itself is come to you biased. How can you make generalizations, right? It's different. Yeah, two individuals are different. That's one angle. The other angle is, even if you have the most pure data set, okay, for example, height. Let's take height. Okay, this is this is not a quality. It is something quantitative and it's measurable. Yeah, on average, women are shorter than men. Okay, that statement is not discriminatory or biased or a wrong data set. You just measure people's heights.
Correct.
Now, if you really measure the heights of every single Indian woman and man, you're going to get a large distribution. Okay. Large distribution means that if 5 feet is here, many women are going to be 5 feet. And then fewer and fewer of them will be taller than 5 feet. And fewer of them will be shorter than 5 feet. So if the height of an Indian woman is 5 feet, you do the same thing for, so that's your 5 women curve. You do the same thing for men. Okay, the curve is going to be a little bit shifted. And maybe the average, if you do the average, you're going to say, okay, there are many more men at say 5 feet 4 inches than there are men at 5 feet. But hey, look at how many women are there still overlapping with the men, and look at how many men are overlapping with the women. Okay?
Correct.
I mean, the curves are so broad. They're so broad that for any woman height, there is going to be a whole bunch of men at that same height, and vice versa. It's only extremes that you can apply these generalizations.
Yeah.
Society, you want to take these generalizations that you've made based on very extremes and apply them to the center of the pack. And men can do nursing, women can do sports, where people can cross, right? So I use height because it's a non-political example. Curves are so broad, and generalizations are not applied to the general population. They can be applied to the extremes. Yeah. It is possible that if you look for the very tallest Indian, it is more likely that that person will be a man. If you look for the tallest Indian, it is more likely the person will be a woman. Okay, that's what that means. But matter for the people in the middle. How does that matter?
Exactly.
The neuro version of the same question is women's brains are smaller than men. What did I just imply? Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, women's brains weigh less than men. But you know what? Brain function is not got to do with how much you have. Okay. Otherwise, the blue whale and the elephant has, brain then. Okay. By the way, the larger the body you have, the more the sensory and motor areas of the brain simply to control that body. Those are cognitive functions. Okay. So the elephant needs a great big brain to control its elephantine body, for example.
Right.
And how much brain you have does not directly correlate with cognitive function. It is how it is wired up.
Yes.
That makes it happen. So, smaller brain, bigger brain by some 50 grams or something, no big deal. No big deal. People try and measure things and make generalizations. And the point is the generalizations don't work. They don't.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's a question of relativity, right? If a woman has a smaller body size in comparison to other women, or for that matter, men, the cranium size will accordingly be smaller, and your brain will have to fit within the cranium, right? So it doesn't matter what the weight of the
connectivity is what decides the brain function. Absolutely.
That's correct.
The brain might be physically smaller, but our cerebral cortex is folded. So you can a lot of sheet in the folds. Okay, so Yeah, the cranium size will not correlate. Weight is a better measure, but not measure connectivity.
This reminds me of one of the statements you had made in one of your TED Talks about the fact that London cab drivers have a well-developed hippocampus, the part that relates to memory. And because they've developed that through years, they know the roads
Spatial
in and
memory,
out.
yes.
Yes, their spatial memory is way better and more advanced than other people because they've practiced it. So it's the connectivity that
it is
you're
absolutely the
referring
connectivity. By the way, so that study was about cab drivers who had done it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
That part of the hippocampus grew, and it grew the wires, it grew the connectivity.
Wow.
And with the advent of GPS, I think that
that ability is getting.
You don't need that, and you don't need to learn it, then you don't grow that brain area.
Yeah, like the ability of remembering phone numbers. We don't feel the need of doing that anymore.
Completely.
Fascinating. So I do now want to get into, how you, like, your energy is infectious. It comes across in your talks as well. It seems that you're so motivated and passionate about what you do. How do you sustain your passion through so many years? How do you sustain your passion? Do you have any habits or practices that keep you grounded or that keep you focused and keep your eye on the prize?
I don't understand the question.
In a sense,
no, there is no prize.
Okay.
There is no me sustaining my passion. The passion is who I am. It sustains me.
Okay.
No, there is no, I don't have to do anything to be eager to do. The eagerness is from within. It's part of me. I'm this way about everything.
That's beautiful.
About dance. So I've always been mad about dance. I've had some 10 years of Bharatnatyam when I was in school and college, but I always wanted to learn Kathak. And I found the most amazing Kathak teacher, Jaipur Gharana, Anjani Ambegaonkar in Los Angeles. So
wow.
I drive during my PhD. And my God, driving on the other side of the road. So I learned to drive so I could go 30 miles to her class. Wednesday morning, 8:15, Sunday evening, 5:30. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. When I went to Chicago, I ached to have this rhythmic kind of dance in my life, and there was no Kathak class around. So I learned tap. I've had 2 years of tap, and I own 3.
Wow.
And now I learned from a most visionary and advanced soul of a teacher and mentor, Sanjukta Wagh. I still learn. And my son seems to have inherited this love for dance. So he and I are in this class. Though, of course, he dances it, at 8 times the energy and speed I can. So we just performed for our colony's 26th January function via Zoom.
Oh, how lovely.
So what I'm saying is, it's always been something I wanted. Rhythm is always something I wanted in life. And even during a stressful PhD and a really stressful postdoc, I found a way to have rhythm in my life because I was withering away without it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no how do I sustain my passion. There is the passion sustains me. I would not be without it.
That's beautiful. No, because I asked this question because it's very personal to me in the sense that I feel the need of generating motivation and even happiness is something that I feel that everyone says happiness comes from within. Or I feel like I have to do things to generate happiness in my life and generate motivation in my life. So the fact that I meet someone like you who says that passion sustains you and that your passion within is something that is contributing to your motivation is so beautiful to even understand and appreciate, because most of us are very forward thinking in the sense that at least I am one of those people who gets too consumed into what my 5-year plan and my 10-year plan is. So it's nice to know that just today, if there's something that you want to enjoy doing and you don't want to wither away, keep doing that. So that was my takeaway from what you said.
Thank you. But I'm very intrigued by the idea that one. I mean, I too, pursue science to be happy. I do a lot of science outreach because I thoroughly enjoy reading interesting things, and it makes me happy. Yeah. So doesn't that map? I mean, I think being a scientist I have the best job. I get paid to read and learn whatever it is I wish to read and learn. When my children were in school, it was chemistry and language and all kinds of things that were not actually neuroscience, just because I was doing sessions with them in school. So those are the things I do to be happy, but they arise from passion.
Yeah.
they arise, they're fueled by passion. So it's, so I don't know, maybe we're just using different words for the same thing.
No, I do hear you. I mean, there are some things that people genuinely just inherently have an internal compass to move towards that. And you don't have to generate much out of it. But there are some aspects of certain parts of your life where you're like, okay, you have to put in the work to get to the place where you want to be to a certain extent. So I hear you. And what you said was really, really incredible. If there was one piece of advice that you would like to give to your younger version, what would that be?
I would actually tell her that the world is so big and so full of fascinating, interesting things. And you can make the time to explore more and reach widely and taste things that you may not have even imagined were wonderful. Things that I discovered later. But do more, try more, experience more, spread your wings farther.
That is just incredible. That is just incredible. I hear you. I resonate with that. And I don't have anything to add to that. I'll just go to the last question. And this is a question that I ask most of my guests. What, according to you, does it take to be resolute?
To be resolute, an inner sense of self-worth. Okay, just I am what I am, and acceptance. I am what I am. Let me find out who I am. Let me find out what I want to do in life. I am worthy of chasing it. I think if every little girl tells herself this in the mirror, I think there might be a way out. Just stand in front of the mirror and say, I'm worthy.
That is just so good. I couldn't have thought of a better way to, end this conversation with you. Even though I can speak to you for hours, Shubha, you've left us with invaluable information and so much to reflect on. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you do greatly. And I look forward to learning about the fantastic things and the fantastic research that you're doing in your lab. Please keep inspiring and stay resolute.
Thank you so very much. It's been really special talking to you. I really admire this show, and I'm going to now tune into a lot more of your sessions as they come.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I hope you liked this episode. For more content to empower your mindset, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And do share this with the resolute women in your life. Take care and bye-bye.